So, common law express trust or constructive common law trust versus corporations. Now, if we want to operate under a corporate charter, it would actually be a little bit different than operating under a trust indentured agreement. And I've been very curious and learning more about these two different entities which we can utilize um, to, I guess, manage assets, conduct business, so on and so forth. Now, I always wanted to know, after I found out about express trust, is why don't we get taught about these things here? Because I ask around, I even ask lawyers and here in Belize, and they don't even know what trust. They say I never learned trust, but I'm like, how could you not learn trust? I mean, everything is trust. But anyway, whether they're being honest or not, I don't know. But I have some papers here that I just got that put a lot of clarity into the differentiation of these two right here. And this is actually some information that was shared by Kenyana Stone in her Facebook post. And it had to do with I think it's 5 pages, and it had to do, I guess, some writings or publication from Mr. Wilson, and I believe it's Woodrow Wilson. Uh, but anyway, it's talking about express trust versus the corporations, and it also has some um, references to chief judges be mentioning certain things here. So what this says basically is that Mr. Wilson was informed, right? I'm going to read a little bit right. Mr. Wilson was informed that in Massachusetts, many trusts had already been set up which allowed people to manage property without creating a formal corporation. These trusts use things like shares, bonds, and promissory notes to manage property, but they don't create an artificial company with its own identity. Instead, trustees, people managing the trust, they're the ones who hold the personal responsibility, unlike corporations that try to avoid personal responsibility. This system is legal and has gained both popularity and criticism, which is the corporate system. So it says here that Mr. Wilson was reminded of an historical example from Alexander Hamilton, who used this creative trust, common law express trust method to organize the Merchants Bank of New York. Isn't that interesting? Some might argue against using trust because some states, like Maine and New Jersey, make money by selling corporate charters. But Mr. Wilson appreciated the information and said he would study it further after his current campaign was over. Now, what I'm reading is not word for word what it says here. It's just simplified, because what it says, it's very it's very good English, but it uses words and context that we're not. It's the regular people are not going to understand. So I'm reading a simplified version, but reach out to me if you want or I'll just share Kenyana's post. But in his speech, Mr. Wilson argued that while corporations are still needed for business, they should not be used to hide wrongdoings. He also stated that lawyers have a responsibility to help improve the law. Express trusts are gaining approval in Massachusetts, and again, I'm just reading what it says. Approval in Massachusetts, and they allow people to manage property and issue shares and bonds without creating a corporation. This system has worked well for generations in both the United States and Great Britain, managing millions and millions and millions of dollars in property. Mr. Wilson argued that public policy should support this approach as it is more efficient and more responsible than corporate laws. Finally, Mr. Wilson suggested that the current legal system should be updated to recognize the value of an express trust or of express trusts, which are based on personal responsibility and efficiency instead of the more evasive corporate laws. Well structured modern express trusts don't avoid legal obligations. and if misused, they should be stopped. They avoid unnecessary business barriers, don't require fixed capital, they don't rely on the misleading idea of par value, which, according to the New York State Bar Association, is often used by scammers and isn't helpful to anyone. These trusts promote good management, encourage business activity, and ensure more effective leadership by trustees compared to the typical corporate directors who often do a poor job. And I am going to tell you this, I have reached out to corporate directors and they never respond. They're horrible. They just evade personal responsibility. Horrible, not trusty. And even the government and the government officials, which should be trustees, but when you look into it, they're more acting as under corporate charters because the government, like the government of Belize, is a corporate entity, and it should be under a trust. And we can put it under a trust. We can put them, and we can assign to them properties such as bonds and securities and express a trust. We can do that, but they're by default always operating under corporate laws. And this is why this is so important to understand. It says here, again, it's they are reminded that this. Okay, well, hold on. Let me. When corporate directors are held accountable in court, they are reminded that the standard for trustees should be their level of responsibility and honesty, not the behavior of directors who are often evasive and unreliable. I agree. I agree. Trustees of an express trust are required to pay taxes on both real and personal properties. They must fully report to the beneficiaries or risk being held accountable in court to the beneficiaries. Transparency is guaranteed for those who have a right to know, but unnecessary curiosity or evasiveness should not be entertained. Trustees are protected for personal losses through the provisions that allow them to be reimbursed by the estate, except in cases of intentional wrongdoing or fraud. The trust's role often states that anyone dealing with the trustee should look to the estate for security, not to the trustee, not to the beneficiaries, which is a well established legal principle. This provision helps to ensure the trust's reliability because of the foundation of the trust is solid. Because if the foundation of the trust is solid, it will attract good trustees and maintain financial stability. On the other hand, corporations often offer weak foundations that are based on irresponsible structures leading to their failure. Think about it. A lot of companies, they open, they do shady stuff, they go bankrupt, that's it. CEOs get away, right? Corporations seem to be a tool for scammers. Um, it seems that if there is to be honest management and administration of property for the benefit of beneficiaries and not for the self, a trust would do that much more efficiently, much more secure, and again, trusts are governed under equitable principles. It says express trust guided by common law and fair practices provide some of the best examples of effective management. In contrast, corporations governed by state laws are often responsible for some of the biggest business scandals in the world in history. Choosing a trustworthy and pure option, like drinking from a clean spring, shouldn't be seen as avoiding something potentially harmful, like a nearby bar room, which may be best avoided. The laws that govern trust and trustees are well established, as Judge Story noted, are even better organized in the US than they were in England. Isn't that interesting? Uh, this is why, if we choose to operate under trust, it is much more respected, especially in the courts, because especially in the courts that recognizes equitable rights, right? Um, it is of a higher standard, because corporations are well known to be just shady. And if the government is acting as a corporation and not a trustee, then obviously there's something shady going on. Just saying. But anyway, it's good stuff right here. I hope you liked it. Peace and love.